Floyd! Floyd! I'll knock you out! He's sick, look at him.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
I personally think it's more to do with it being Sandy Ryan. That's just my personal opinion. Now, if she would have came out and said, you know what, Sandy Ryan said, been on me back since 2016 over the Olympic qualification. Then I turned pro, and her and a coach at the time was calling me out and fat shaming me and doing this. Morally, I don't want to give her a payday. I'd have respected Chantel more for that. But I think there'd have been maybe possibly a backlash for that, for all the reasons that you're saying, Dave. So I don't think they've come out and said that, and I think they're trying to go with the, well, we stand with Serrano, and we want 3-minute rounds, and we want it to be equal, and we want it to be this. I think people are now like, well, exactly what you've said. They're like, well, why are you doing that? It doesn't really make sense.
It seemed that former Unified Champion Natasha Jonas said the quiet part out loud on what was the Overhand podcast available on Spotify. She doesn't buy that Chantel vacated the title to take a stand for women. It's not an issue that Chantel was ever all that vocal about to begin with.
Yeah, but she's with MVP now. They've been vocal about it.
Hey, that's all well and good, but when a fighter has spent the amount of time pursuing a Katie Taylor fight, Taylor rematch, trilogy that Chantel has, and her only bargaining chip being that WBC interim title, it would seem strange that you only now decided to vacate it when you're under orders to fight Sandy. Everybody knows what it is, Natasha Jonas included. They've got history, those two.
That's how much you don't want to fight her. You dropped your WBC interim title so that you wouldn't have to.
Katie Taylor is very close to retirement, to where we may not see her box again. So had Chantel held on to that interim title, she would have been in line to become a champion again. And you just sacrificed that.
So much she don't want to fight Sandy. Natasha Jonas thinks it's because Sandy and her team said some mean things about Chantel and the amateurs.
That she should have just come out with that and said that. But if she did, that would have provided no avail, no reprieve. She would have been subject to the same criticism she's getting now, because to a lot of people, it just looks like a duck. Whether it's over 3-minute rounds or because you don't want to give her the payday, it all communicates the same thing. You don't want to fight her. And why? Because of how much you don't like each other? That's all the more reason to fight. Those are the fights that draw the most eyes to the sport of boxing, the most attention, the grudge matches, the bad blood fights, the fights where there's history. Whether it's Clarissa Shields versus Savannah Marshall or Michaela Mayer versus Alicia Baumgartner, those are the fights that draw the most eyes and, in effect, elevate the sport of women's boxing, because those are the fights that people want to see. Now, you want to deprive the people of that.
The people are not as hung up on 3-minute rounds as they are hung up on fights they want to see. Fights they want to see happening in a timely fashion. So that if you're telling them the reason you're not fighting Sandy is because you're taking a stand for 3-minute rounds, that will not suffice.
A big part of the reason women's boxing has grown so rapidly over the last 7 or 8 years is because the women, unlike the men, showed more willingness to face each other, fight in the meaningful fights, the significant fights, that it never took very long, and the fights themselves lived up to the hype. But when you don't have the fights,
and I don't know what the plan is for Chantel,
because you're standing on principle, the boxing fans are less concerned with principle and more concerned with pugilism. That is reality. I don't know what MVP's plan for Chantel Cameron is. They don't have very many ponies in that super lightweight show. She doesn't want to fight Sandy for personal reasons, or maybe she just doesn't think she can win. I don't know, but if you're not going to fight a live animal in Sandy, what live animals are you going to fight?
I would not say that the super lightweight division right now is as stacked as, say, 147 or 135. Not as deep as 122, 118, or 115. It's not.
There's not that many big names or big fights to make at 140. So when you walk away from a Sandy Ryan fight, I hope you got a plan B. I hope you have somebody else in mind, because to a lot of people, this just looks like a stone-cold duck disguised as virtue, which really pisses people off. You're insulting their intelligence by suggesting this is about taking a stand for women, for equality, for 3-minute rounds.
Nobody's buying that. Chantel has never been that vocal an advocate for 3-minute rounds in women's boxing that you all of a sudden take a stand now? That's convenient.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, undefeated world champion responds to Terence Crawford's call-out. I'll be ready. They're talking about a potential Janibek Alimkhanalai fight ahead of his fight with Arislandi Lara.
Terence Crawford recently made his next target known, and now the man in question has responded to the pound-for-pound great. Crawford is still riding high after defeating Canelo Alvarez to become undisputed super middleweight champion this past September, with rumors growing ever since about who Bud may want to take on next. He appeared to end that speculation last week when he stated that he currently has his eyes on undefeated middleweight world champion Janibek Alimkhanalai, meaning the December 6th middleweight unification between Janibek and Lara could have more than belts on the line. In just over 4 weeks, the 160-pound division will have only 2 champions, Janibek or Lara, with 3 of them, with the 4th, WBC, in the possession of Carlos Adames. At the Frost Bank Center in San Antonio, Texas, Janibek puts his WBO and IBF titles on the line against the WBA held by Lara. The much-needed divisional matchup will have many a keen observer, but perhaps none bigger than Crawford. It means the stakes may have been raised for next month's 3-belt unification, but how does Janibek feel about a potential mega fight against Crawford? Speaking at a virtual press conference ahead of his next fight, he revealed his stance. Yes, of course. It would be a very, very good fight, and I will be ready for it because it's a big fight, and I think everybody would be looking into it. The Kazakhstan fighter has looked a class above his opposition to date, but will be in deeper waters than normal against Lara, who has shared the ring with world-class opponents in his career to date.
Janibek really hasn't. Even the guy that he won the IBF title from, a then unbeaten Vincenzo Gualtieri, he was a champion of circumstance, a champion of chance.
Highly forgettable. I don't think most people remember that going in, Vincenzo was IBF champion because I don't think most people even know who Vincenzo was.
Arislandi Lara is a step up from a Vincenzo Gualtieri, and Terence Crawford is a step up from an Arislandi Lara, while the Crawford carrot appears to be dangling. Janibek admits his motivations for now lie elsewhere. The motivation is for me to get all 4 titles, and that's what I'm trying to do. Of course, if a possibility would be to fight with a fighter like Crawford, that would be a huge opportunity, and it would give me a lot of motivation. Crawford had also recently been linked to a shock fight with Jake Paul, but has already appeared to rule that out, making Janibek the frontrunner, at least for now.
Terence Crawford sticking around after the biggest win of his career has everything to do with him peaking in popularity. If he does decide to stick around, he's a lot more popular than he's ever been, and a lot more well-paid, and understandably, he doesn't want that to end. Janibek, on the other hand, is very close to what he's been after all this time: unification matches and big fights.
Even if he struggles to get Carlos Adames in the ring, should he beat Arislandi Lara, that Crawford fight will more than suffice.
The question is, does he beat Arislandi Lara? There is a legitimate argument that Lara is a step up from anybody that Janibek has fought so far. He's a better fighter than anybody Janibek has fought so far.
Janibek isn't worried about it.
Janibek says, I don't think it's going to be a difficult fight for me. Even at his advanced age, Arislandi Lara remains one of boxing's best middleweights. The 42-year-old Lara's legs aren't what they once were, but the cerebral Cuban changed his style to adapt to physical limitations and still dominated Danny Garcia in his last fight. The WBA 160-pound champion is the only opponent to stop Garcia, a 2-weight world champion who lost by technical knockout when he declined to continue after the 9th in September.
I'd wager that the author of this article has a lot more stock in Lara beating Danny than I do, because Lara beating Danny is not a big feather in his cap.
Danny Garcia never did nothing at middleweight, and Danny Garcia has no noteworthy wins above 140 pounds.
No noteworthy wins at 147, none at 154, much less 160, so beating him there doesn't mean a lot.
Lara has boxed only 3 times in the last 4.5 years. The skillful southpaw's inactivity aside, Lara hasn't lost since Jarrett Hurd edged him by split decision in their action-packed
junior middleweight match in April of 2018 and has faced a respectable list of former champions. Janibek Alimkhanuly appreciates Lara's willingness to fight him in December in San Antonio and respects all Lara has accomplished as a pro and amateur. The strong southpaw just doesn't think Lara will test him the way Lara's resume and experience suggest he can. In my past, I fought a lot of guys who were left-handed. In my amateur and pro careers, Alimkhanuly said during a virtual press conference recently, even when I was an amateur boxer, I was watching a lot of fighting already in the pros, so I know his style. I know what he can do. I know what he cannot do. I don't think it's going to be a difficult bout for me.
I don't think it is either.
Whereas Lara dropped decisions to Hurd, Canelo Alvarez, and Paul Williams during his 17-year pro career, Kazakhstan's Alimkhanuly hasn't even come close to losing since he turned pro 9 years ago. Alimkhanuly, who owns the IBF and WBO middleweight titles, is also 10 years younger than Lara and ranked number 1 among Ring's top 10 contenders for an unclaimed championship. Lara nevertheless assured Alimkhanuly during the aforementioned press conference that their fight for 3 middleweight crowns won't be nearly as easy as his confident opponent suggests. Look, all I have to say for Janibek is look, you can think whatever you want, Lara said. Let's see on December 6th if you're really ready for what's coming. Let's see if it's as easy as you think it's going to be, because you're going to be in for a big surprise, I can tell you that. FanDuel lists Alimkhanuly as almost a 5-1 favorite to beat Lara in the 12-round co-feature of a PBC pay-per-view show on Amazon Prime Video.
Two things can be true at the same time. While Erislandy Lara is a step up in class for Janibek Alimkhanuly, and better than anybody he's fought so far, he is still 42 years old.
He is still a sparsely active, aging fighter, aging champion that has not seen action in over a year.
So is he a potential banana skin for Janibek Alimkhanuly? I would say no.
If this were the Erislandy Lara of a few years ago, the one that fought Canelo, I would pick him to handily beat Janibek Alimkhanuly, who really doesn't impress me.
Guy's like a fucking robot.
But he is big, he is strong, and he is 10 years younger than Erislandy Lara. If this were the Erislandy Lara of a few years ago, light on his feet, on his toes, moving, using the jab, and landing hard punches, I would pick Lara to win the fight, which is saying a lot, because I really don't like pure boxers like Lara.
If this were the Lara of a few years ago, I would pick him to win. But it's not a few years ago, it's a few years later, and Lara's legs aren't what they used to be. He doesn't move around as much, he sits on his punches more now.
Lara's got power, but so does Janibek Alimkhanuly.
Lara's got experience, whereas Janibek has youth and freshness and volume.
Lara is a southpaw, and so is Janibek Alimkhanuly in this battle of the southpaws, and I anticipate it's going to be physicality that gets to Lara. Like what you saw in the Jarrett Hurd fight, it's going to be physicality and volume. The pace is going to get to him. Being forced to fight when he doesn't want to fight. Being forced to trade when he doesn't want to trade. Upping the tempo on Lara is how I think Janibek wins the fight.
I think he stops him. I think he's gonna knock out Lara.
So that if all that stands in between Janibek and a Crawford fight is Erislandy Lara, well, I don't think Lara's gonna be a problem. After that, sky's the limit.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, south of middle at junior middle, per a tweet from the Boxing Voice, breaking, I've been told Xander Zayas versus Abbas Baraou is next. Zayas should announce it in Puerto Rico.
This is in keeping with reports we've been seeing detailing a unification match between the two set for early next year, that a dialogue has already been established and they've been talking. I think that this is a winnable fight for Xander Zayas, who is the noticeably taller, longer fighter of the two, lighter on his feet,
mobile,
making himself a moving target. What Xander Zayas lacks in power, he makes up for in movement and good fundamentals. A balanced approach of offense and defense he toggles through seamlessly. Still very young and showing his ambition.
This is a winnable fight for Xander. I didn't say it was easy, but it is winnable. Abbas Baraou, he's an according to Hoyle pressure fighter, coming forward, throwing punches in bunches, crashing the pocket. You know how it goes.
A bit shorter, stockier, and stumpier than Xander Zayas. It's going to be all on him to barrel forward and keep the pressure on Xander in what is Xander's neck of the woods, where he's likely to get maximum consideration, questions that need answers. If this fight is really made, who's promoting it? Who's paying for it? We know Xander's with Top Rank, but we also know that Top Rank is between broadcasters right now. Is it possible that behind the scenes, Top Rank already knows who they're going to come back with early next year, and they just haven't announced it?
Is it possible? Is it possible that perhaps they're renting Xander Zayas out, loaning him to another promotion, say MVP, who also have a show set to go down in Puerto Rico early next year? Is that possible?
Serrano versus Cruz is going down early next year in January, and what would be more ideal than having one of the greatest Puerto Rican fighters the island has ever produced and one of their young champions on the same show? That's sure to put some asses in some seats. That's sure to do well on the island of Puerto Rico, and I could see that. If Top Rank is still between broadcasters right now, they may have outsourced Xander to MVP who could use him. Nothing would surprise me.
That maybe Top Rank already has a broadcast partner and they haven't announced it yet, or they've outsourced Xander to somebody who can pay him and somebody who can use him. Nothing would surprise me.
Now, as far as Xander, fighting in a unification match so soon after becoming a champion himself, I think that effectively communicates what kind of fighter he is.
Not for the grab ass, and he's not trying to waste any time. Younger than Jaron Boots Ennis. Younger than Virgil Ortiz.
Not for the grab ass, and he's not trying to waste any time. What's interesting is the winner of the fight, whoever it is, will be in possession of the WBA title. It just so happens that Boots is WBA interim champion. He's the mandatory for whoever wins a fight, whether it's Xander or Abbas Baraou.
That should make things interesting.
That is, unless Jaron Ennis can challenge another champion at the weight so he can get a belt of his own. It was recently announced that Matchroom picked up the rights for the upcoming Bakram Murtazaliev versus Josh Kelly fight set to go down early next year. And I don't think they did that for no reason. I think they did that with Jaron Ennis in mind. He likely gets the winner, but it's important to note that he's also WBA interim champion, and he can use that interim title as a segue to fight the winner of this fight.
Two avenues of opportunity.
Over to Xander, who, if he is successful and he becomes a unified champion so soon after picking up a belt, he's on the right track. He's got the look, he's got the charisma, he's got the Puerto Rican following.
He's not a Jonas Sabo like a lot of these New Yorkers and Philly Ricans. He speaks the language. He's from the island.
He's not like Danny Garcia. He's not like Edgar Berlanga. He is in tune with the people on the island of Puerto Rico, and that gives him an upper hand, speaking both English and Spanish. It's been a question as to who would take up the mantle as the face of Puerto Rican boxing. Who would sit on that throne when it comes to the men?
And I've long maintained Xander Zayas has a lot of the right ingredients to be that guy. Really helps that he's a young guy. He's in his early 20s. His whole career is ahead of him. I like what this kid is doing, and I look forward to seeing him fight Abbas Baraou if this news checks out.